And God's will is simple. The most wretched man in hell will not be Adolf Hitler. The most wretched man in hell, or woman, will not be one like Joe Stalin or some of these more modern devils. The most wretched person in hell will be a former Seventh-day Adventist.
Hello and welcome to another SDAQ&A. My special guest today is none other than Paul Johnson. I'm going to give a special little intro that I've written out because there's so many things to remember, and it's such an honor to have Paul on the show. He's in the green room. I will be bringing him out in just a moment, and it's so good to have him on the show. His music really it was so influential on me, and in many ways was just a backdrop to a lot of my growing up as an Adventist, my then transition getting involved with the Christian music scene and then into the secular scene, and there he was at every one of those places, those realms, and just offering up incredible music and arrangements, etc. So here's my official welcome and a bit of background on Paul Johnson for the tiny amount who don't know who he is. So I'm incredibly excited to welcome a true heavyweight of the vocal and recording world to the microphone today. If you have ever listened to the sweeping, rich harmonies of contemporary Christian music or tuned into iconic Hollywood television specials over the last few decades, you have heard his handiwork. My guest today is Paul Johnson. He is a Grammy-nominated, Dove Award-winning composer, arranger, and conductor who has shaped the landscape of faith-based and popular music. He has been credited. He has credited work on over 60 albums and a staggering 800 songs. For our listeners from a Seventh-day Adventist background, Paul's name is absolutely cherished. In the late 60s and 70s, he revolutionized the Seventh-day Adventist Church's music scene through Way Out Youth, that ministry, and his own singing group, Paul Johnson Singers, introducing a fresh contemporary vocal sound that a whole generation grew up on. But his gift quickly outgrew denominational boundaries. He went on to become one of Hollywood and Nashville's most sought-after musical minds, serving as musical director of the American Cinema Awards, conducting for elite studio orchestras and arranging for powerhouse vocal icons, including none other than Whitney Houston, Donna Summer, and Al Jarreau, to name a few. Today, we're going to dive deep into his fascinating journey from the strict roots of traditional church music through the explosion of the CCM industry, the Christian contemporary music industry, all the way to the high-stakes recording studios of Los Angeles. So we'll explore how his music and his personal faith have evolved along the way, and somewhere in that mix, we will explore Adventist theology. So please welcome to the show, Paul Johnson. How are you, Paul?
Hey, Peter. We're doing this. Finally.
We're doing it. We're there. We've got it all going. I was just saying to you off air that the last couple of months we've just been rescheduling, trying new time slots. So we're well within that frame, and we've got a lot of people watching today. So welcome, everybody. Good to have you here. We look forward to any thoughts and comments you'd like to make in the chat while we're going live. And yeah, Paul, you have certainly covered a lot of ground in your young life. And here
It's
we
not
are
so
now.
young. It's not so young anymore, Peter.
Well, I remember when I was a young Seventh-day Adventist, initially the heritage singers were kind of my only listen into something mildly contemporary. We were in an environment that was, fairly conservative with music. And I remember listening to their harmonies and their arrangements, and thinking, wow, there's something interesting going on there that's more than just your three-part harmonies for a hymn. And then I discovered your music, Paul Johnson's Singers. I think I even have a couple of albums. I certainly do, still. And that took it to the next level, because I think you were starting to infuse, am I correct, like almost a jazz harmonic realm? There were kind of, all of a sudden, there was sevenths and major sevenths and ninths and other notes coming in as well. And
Yep. That's
that
what
was,
got me into trouble.
yes, I was going to say, it's even in the church handbook, the Adventist handbook, that says you're not allowed to add these extra notes to chord structures. Yes, that would have. And then over here in Australia, Bob Wolfgram, Lowell Tarling, Genelevich, Bob released an album called All My Friends Are Sinners with Sally Hilda, and that was 1979, I think. So all of a sudden there was this explosion of contemporary music coming into the Adventist church, and for a young teen that I was at the time, it was incredibly interesting and motivating. And so, yeah, it's such a pleasure and honor to have you on the program today, because you were part of that rich tapestry that helped me out of a black and white kind of scheduled style of music to something that was way more interesting. So tell us a little bit about some of your early years with Adventism and music. We're going to then cover a few other areas. I've got some questions I want to just quickly throw at you. But then I'm really keen to dig into something that you and I are quite interested in, and that's some of the Adventist theology, like just exploring some of it. And does this make sense? Does this connect, accurately to the Bible? So we're going to go into that as well. But yeah, just tell us a little bit about Paul Johnson, growing up years, how you got into music, and just give us a brief overview. And then I've got a handful of questions I want to throw at you as well.
Well, I'm a third generation Adventist, and I grew up in Seattle, Washington. My dad was a physician, graduate of Loma Linda. In fact, I have about five members of my family that graduated from Loma Linda. So,
Wow.
yeah, I had a really good experience growing up in the church, and so I don't have like animus towards the church from bad memories as a kid growing up. I ran into problems when I went to Walla Walla College.
Yeah.
They didn't like my music so much. And so that was a challenge for me, but in a way, it actually worked in my favor, because they gave me such a bad time that it made me determined to end up doing what I ended up doing. So, and I had some really good friends along the way. One was Earl Johnson. He worked for Chapel Records. And my first album was for Chapel Records. So he championed my cause there. I would have never gotten albums out, I don't think, if it hadn't been for him. So I don't know if you want to.
Yes, do show and tell anytime you like.
Relive any of that.
I 100% do. Chapel was an incredible, like in Australia, we didn't have the opportunities as musicians to form some kind of a network or have people back us with with recordings and getting albums out and stuff. It was very independent, and I would look longingly across the Pacific Ocean and at Chapel and just think, wow, it's a label that the Adventist Church, it might be independent, but it's very networked. And I met some of the guys that were playing in one of the lineups of the Heritage Singers when they toured here. And they said, yeah, in the States, we can pretty much tour a different town, different city every night for 2-3 years. And I thought in Australia, you'd do that in 2 weeks. Even though we're a big country, broad, landscape, we've really only got 7 to 10 major cities, really.
Max Mason and I were good friends.
Yeah.
And I actually worked on one of their albums, one of the hymns albums.
Which one was it? Do you remember?
Funny you should ask. I have it right here. It's called Thinking Back, 100-Year-Old Gospel Favorites.
Oh, wow. Yes.
I orchestrated this one. Max did the vocals, and he sent it to me, and then I orchestrated it around what he sent me.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So
I remember that album.
This was 1976. But my first album for Chapel was this one, which is...
Yes. Just hold it for a second. No one understands like Jesus. Yeah, in researching today's program, I came across that one quite a lot online.
This was my first album.
Yeah. Just hold that one up again.
What is it?
Just hold that one up again for us, just so we can all see it and take notes. And that's you singing the lead vocals as well.
No, what I did. This was a piano album. I sat down and I just ad-libbed about 10 or 12.
So that's just an instrumental album, that one.
10 old hymns. And then after I listened to it, I thought, this would be good if I added some voices to it. So I ended up doing that. And in the process of doing that, I kind of came to the realization that I was kind of good at this.
Yeah.
I might want to do this again. So that was the first one. That's on Chapel. The second one, I'm really surprised I got away with this. It was called Singing the 70s. And
I remember that one.
This one, we actually had piano, bass, and drums on it.
Wow.
And they weren't comfortable putting it on Chapel records, so they invented bridge records for this kind of material. And I don't know if you know who Michael Amardian is. Do you know that name?
No.
He's produced a lot of big artists that you would know, but he played drums on this. And basically this was not so much old hymns as it was like the kind of songs you'd sing around the campfire, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it's got a lot of rhythm in it. I pushed the boundaries on this.
Yeah. I remember that album.
Oh, do you really?
Yes. There was friends of mine, David Menzies, who would be around your age, and I'm just a little bit under that, and his younger brother and I would play music, and he brought that album home and showed us, and we were shocked that there were drums. And his brother, his brother.
I was shocked I got away with it.
Yeah. Oh,
so
wow, amazing.
That was fun to do.
Yeah.
And then I did.
Are some of these available on Spotify? Do you know, or Apple Music?
Yeah, you can find all of them on YouTube.
Right.
They're all up on YouTube.
Yeah, great.
If you just type in Paul Johnson Singers or Paul Johnson Voices, they'll all come up. I'm in the process of redistributing them, and they'll eventually be all on Spotify.
Yeah,
But
that's awesome.
but
Well, I'm just
after I
having a quick look now, and there's a lot already on Spotify.
yeah, there are some, but they're
I
kind
think
of scattered around.
yeah, it's the one you did with the music and lyrics of Dan Dirksen. Is that your
Yeah,
project?
yeah.
Yeah.
Dan was a classmate of mine at Walla Walla,
Yeah.
and he did music back in the 70s for It Is Written and Faith for Today, and sometimes I would orchestrate those for the TV shows.
Mm.
But he wrote some really great songs, and I did a whole album of his material, and
Mm.
I re-released it. It's on Spotify and it's on Apple Music. It's on all the platforms.
Mm.
Um, and I got it done before Dan passed away, and I worked really hard to get it out so that he could
You could
he
have a
could
listen.
he could enjoy
Mm.
knowing that it was out and available. I
Yeah.
did one whole choral album of his songs, um, and then I did a collection of the TV themes that he did, because he wrote the themes for a number of
Really?
Adventist TV shows. Yeah,
Mm.
so I I worked really hard at getting those done before he passed away, because
Yeah.
I wanted him to know
Yeah.
that
Good on you. Good on you.
that they would outlive him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I wanted to do something more complex harmonically. And I did a number of a cappella albums where the harmonies are really complex and lush and almost impossible to sing. But I was lucky to be able to hire really great studio singers. They were the same singers that did Ray Conniff and Percy Faith, Henry Mancini,
Wow.
any album that had um, any kind of SATB choir on it. Those are the people I got to use on,
Yeah.
particularly this album,
Right.
What's the Way Out? And this was a companion to what I was working on at the time. I was writing the Bible study series for the Voice of Prophecy for young people, and it was called The Way Out.
Mm.
So there's some songs on here that are congruent with that chapter of my life,
Yeah.
which we'll talk about.
When when I was young and trying to get into the music industry, I really desired to do it full time because anyone who has a passion for something loves to turn it full time.
Exactly.
It was very difficult to do that in Australia in the Adventist church, but
Yeah.
but it sounds like you may have had some opportunities quite young to actually have people say, look, we value what you're doing, we'd like you to pay you to do these intros, we'd like to pay you to do these arrangements. Were you able to kind of eke out some kind of an existence? Did you become aware that this could actually be your passion and work?
Yeah. Once again, I was very lucky to have some people who believed in me at different record labels. And so I was doing product. After I did these ones that I just showed you, I started doing product for Word Records and Tempo Records, which was went along with a publishing company for the Nazarene Publishing House. The Nazarenes were wonderful to me. They allowed me to do a lot of fun projects.
Mm.
And back around that time, Ralph Carmichael and Kurt Kaiser kind of pioneered the record songbook combo product, where choirs could listen to the album and then they could perform the music. They went together, and we had tracks back then too, of course. So I just, I I just knocked on a lot of doors.
Mm.
And I'll tell you one thing that was really um, just a huge event in my life, because I discovered Ralph Carmichael's arranging
Mhm.
in the early 60s. And there was an album he did called Hymns at Sunset for I didn't know what a Christian bookstore was. Been another store. So I didn't know there was this kind of product even out there. But this particular album he did for Capitol Records, and I found it in a department store. And the minute I put that needle down, back then you could go to a play booth and take the record out and listen to it before you bought it. I remember when I put the needle down on that vinyl album, it was like the heavens parted open for me. It,
Yeah.
it was like it was so glorious and so wonderful. I couldn't get enough of it. And this was around 1960, 1961. So I started looking for his name on anything that I could find, and I found out that he did a lot of Nat King Cole's albums and a lot of different artists, Jack Jones, Roger Williams, piano player. And there was a World's Fair in Seattle where I grew up in the early 60s. And my family took me to a neck. There it is.
Yeah.
You're good.
I'll bring that up.
That's a great album. That's one of my very favorite albums.
Yeah.
But the harmonies and the choral writing on it was just so brilliant. I couldn't get enough of it, and I just thought, I want to hear more of this. How do I find more of this? And around that time, my family took me to a Nat King Cole concert during the Seattle World's Fair. And I took this album, Hymns at Sunset, with me, hoping that Ralph might be there conducting for the show because I knew he arranged it. So we get there for the show. It's in this huge stadium, just thousands of people. And I'm probably 15 years old, 16 maybe. I have that album under my arm. And our seats ended up being up in the nosebleed section. But I was just so excited to see Nat King Cole perform.
Mm.
I was a big fan of him anyway, but I thought Ralph would be conducting the show. He was in the program as the arranger, so I thought he'd be there. And the show started, and it wasn't him conducting. And so for the first 10 minutes, I was really disappointed. But about 10 minutes into the show, and this is in this huge stadium, Peter. I mean, there must have been, I don't know, 15,000 people in there. I see this man walk down the aisle. This is during one of the numbers. And he stops at the stairs that come up to where my family and I are sitting. He walks up the stairs and he sits right next to me.
No way.
And it's Ralph Carmichael.
Oh,
I mean, what are the chances of that happening?
that is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I have to just remind myself of that from time to time because,
You,
that just wasn't an accident.
did you just
And
whip out the album all of a sudden and say,
no,
"Oh,
no. What I did, well, I wanted to make sure it was really him. And so I have this album under my arm and he's sitting here. And I keep looking at the back of it because there's a little picture of him on the back of it. And I'm going, yeah, I think that's really him. So at intermission, I whip my album out and I say, could you sign my album, please?
Oh, what a story. Wow.
And he was as surprised as I was because he didn't think he was going to be recognized, much less me, who's probably his biggest fan in the world.
Super fan. Yeah. Wow.
So, I said, have you done any more albums like this? Can I get it? And if so, where can I find them? So he told me about other product that he had done and that where I could get them at Christian bookstores. And and he gave me his phone number and he said, when you come to California, call me and I'll take you to a session with me. So I certainly did that.
Yes.
Every time I went to California, I'd call him and he would take me to Capitol Records where he usually recorded, and I could sit in the corner and watch him. And that was my education. And so all the way through college, I would my family always went to Southern California for the holidays, New Year's, for the Rose Parade and the Rose Bowl and all of that. And every time I would call Ralph and he'd take me to sessions. So years later, when I moved to California, it was Ralph that opened a lot of doors for me. And my first albums I did outside of Chapel and Bridge Records was for his company, Light Records, Lexicon Music. It was this album.
Wow.
And it's called, this is funny. I've never told this people. It's Paul Johnson and the Sure Foundation. That's the name I made up for this group that recorded all my songs on this.
Yeah.
And they were basically the same voices that did the Partridge Family for the TV show.
I love those harmonies.
This is basically the Partridge Family.
That makes me love it even more. So what's the album called? I'm going to try and bring that one up too. I mean, I know you're holding it up, but
it says Ralph Carmichael presents Paul Johnson and the Sure Foundation.
I've got a video of it.
And there was a choral book that went along with this, so youth choirs could listen to it and then they could buy the music and perform it.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal to me.
That is incredible. What a story. And what an incredible opportunity that gave you. That's the one, isn't it?
Yeah.
To take the journey further, that, like you said, that moment of sitting next to him. What are the odds of that? That's just too serendipitous. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think about that often whenever if I ever am tempted to question God's providence in my life, all I have to do is think of that.
Yeah.
That Nat King Cole concert.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And that was
such
pretty
a
cool
good story. Yeah. Wow.
Around that same time, I did this Pat Boone album called Songs from the Inner Court. I think it's got my name down here on it somewhere. I just did an interview with Pat a couple of years ago. He was in town here in Nashville. And I did 2 albums for Pat over the years, and one of them was nominated for a Grammy. That was one of the nominations. It was this album that got nominated for a Grammy.
Wow. See, it's funny, I know of some of the music you orchestrated and arranged, but I didn't know that other albums that I really liked and enjoyed listening to the arrangements was you as well, like the Pat Boone stuff. That album and another one, one on the chair. Did you hold one up while I was the other? Yeah, that one. That one. I've got that album.
Well, when I did the interview with him a couple summers ago, he held this album up and he said, I've recorded dozens of albums in my career. And he says, this is my very favorite.
Wow.
That's that just blows me away. Because the cool thing behind that is that when I was a teenager, I was the biggest Pat Boone fan.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, going all the way back to Love Letters in the Sand, which is
Yeah.
late 50s. And you know, he and Elvis were around the same time, and Elvis looked up to Pat
Mm.
like
Yeah.
with so much respect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Pat's 92 years old now. He's still going.
Still going. Wow.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what was that album called?
This is called Songs from the Inner Court. And it's basically a worship album. And this was before praise and worship music was a thing.
Mm.
He
Try.
came up to me at church one time and he says, I have this concept for an album. And he had just heard one of my songs called A Sacrifice of Praise. And that triggered him to ask me if I'd be interested in doing this album. And he said, I want to create an atmosphere of being in the presence of God. And I want it to be intimate. I want it to be royal. I want it to be regal. But I want it to be intimate. And could you do that for me?
Yeah.
And I said, oh, absolutely. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I had never arranged for full string choir before. So I just said, oh yeah, I'd love to do that.
Oh.
So that's one of the many times when I put myself in a situation that was bigger than my shoes. And I would put myself in those situations where I had to force myself to stretch myself and learn how to do this. And I remember calling my dad. My dad was a fiddle player. Before he and his brother went to Loma Linda, they were in show business during the Depression.
Really?
And they played in the studio orchestras in LA and Hollywood. And it's kind of funny. They went straight from Hollywood to Walla Walla College. And then to Loma Linda. They graduated in 43. But Dad he and his brother played violin in studio orchestras. So I said, oh my gosh.
Just bringing up that image. That's about 2-3 years ago, I think. Sorry to interrupt, but it just popped
That's
up.
okay. It's fun to see those.
Yeah.
I said, well, how do I do this, Dad? I had arranged for violins as a sweetening layer of orchestrations that I was doing at that time. But I hadn't done violas and cellos and the whole string orchestra. And here's what he told me. He said, if it sounds good on the piano, it'll sound good with strings. So that's the only education I had before I did this album. And there's just something very, well, we use the word anointed. There's just something very innocent and sacred about it. And what pleased me the most is that Pat was pleased with it. He just said, this is exactly what I wanted. So to hear him say that after all these years, because this was over 50 years ago that we did this, was really, really wonderful. That's kind of a full circle for me because I was such a fan when I was a kid, and then I got to do
It's incredible.
2 albums for him.
That's incredible. What I'm loving about this conversation, I'm making little notes of albums I cannot wait to listen to after we've finished our chat.
Okay, well, I don't want to take up too much time on
No, not this is no. We can go
all
for
this.
10 hours. I'm happy. With those connections, isn't it interesting? Like there's the Little Richard was an Adventist, and
Yeah.
Pat Boone did a copy of Tutti Frutti.
Yep.
Is that what it's called? And there's just lots of little interconnections through there. And I remember Danny Shelton interviewing Little Richard on 3ABN not too long before he died. Did you ever get to meet him at all?
No, well, yes and no. I was part of a show that Rosemary Clooney used to put on every year. It was called Singers Salute the Songwriters, and she would pick certain songwriters and then have all these various artists perform their songs. It was always an incredible evening. And one of the shows I did, Little Richard was on that show, and I'm trying to think what song he did. I don't remember, but he was part of the group. So I met him, but I didn't know him.
Yeah.
I did know Billy Preston, though. I worked on.
Oh, really?
I worked on his gospel album. Did you?
Is he Billy that played on the Beatles? Get Back.
Oh yeah, they loved him. Did you know who Walter Ortiz was? He was Adventist, wonderful African American singer. He sounded just like Johnny Mathis.
Oh, really?
And I did Walter's first album.
What was his name?
Pardon me?
What was his name again?
Walter Ortiz. And he was with Breath of Life Ministry, and he passed away about 5 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And I went to his service at Oakwood College, and the friend that drove me down there took me to the Little Richard's gravesite.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they have a lot of memories of him. But Walter was he was just one of the finest singers. There he is.
There he is. Wow.
Yeah, what a dear man. So after I did Walter's album, the same company did Billy Preston's gospel album. And that's how I got that gig. And I didn't produce the album, but I did some of the strings on the album. And I wish I'd gotten a picture with him.
Oh, yeah,
there are a number of people that I just think, why didn't I get pictures with them? A lot of them I did. So I have
these days you just whip out your phone and
yeah, I got so many pictures on my phone, just like everybody else. It's almost hard to find things. And then one of my favorite albums is this one. It's called The Pleasure's Mine. It's Dave Boyer. Do you know who he is?
No.
Dave Boyer was the Sinatra of gospel music.
Right.
So this is a big band album, and there's a song on here that Sam Acampo. Do you know that name? He's an Adventist keyboard player. He does programs all over the place. He's doing some of the he's doing some of the material from this album at Loma Linda next month.
Oh,
I think. Yeah, next month. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much time with all this because
no, this is great.
I want to talk about theology.
Yeah, I know. Just hold up a few more. We've got to have a little bit more of a walk down memory lane.
Okay, well, during that early period, I did a number of albums for Tom Netherton. He was on the Lawrence Welk Show. And I did 4 albums for him, I think. And I did a lot of choral albums because that was kind of my favorite thing to do. And one of them, do you remember who John Peterson is? Do you know that name?
No.
He wrote so many great gospel songs. And we used to sing them at Walla Walla when I was there. So Send I You, we used to sing that all the time. He wrote It Took a Miracle. It was a huge song for him. There's a new song in my heart, Heaven Came Down and Glory
Yeah. Oh,
Filled
yeah.
My Soul.
But he wrote those.
Yeah.
Oh, I know all of those songs. Yeah.
I Believe in Miracles.
Yeah.
No One Understands Like Jesus.
Yeah. Wow.
And my favorite is Jesus Led Me All the Way. I love that song. So I did a whole album of his material.
Oh, yes. I know that album.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is with studio singers, about 18 of them. And it's a fun album.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how he was going to think about it, John, because I took quite a few liberties
Right.
with his songs. But his daughters, he has 3 wonderful daughters. They loved it.
Yeah.
And he wrote the nicest liner notes on the back. So
Yeah.
he was very kind to me.
Can you just hold the cover up of that one again? Because I know people are taking notes as well. So it's...
Yeah, you can listen to this on YouTube. It's on
Yeah.
YouTube.
Yeah.
I didn't put it there, but somebody did.
Yeah.
So this kind of album where I had a big group of professional singers, I got to do 4 or 5 albums like that. And that kind of became a signature for me. And all the guys in Take 6, or at least Mark Kibble and Cedric and Claude, and they grew up on these albums. So, and one, this is one of my best compliments I think I ever got. One of them said, "You gave us permission to be black."
That reminds me of when they were discovering Elvis.
Yeah, because I think even they ran into Take 6. They expanded the boundaries. They went way beyond anything I did. Yeah. I'm just honored that they would even include me in their biography. But it's that tight, really tight jazz harmony that they're so wonderful at.
Yeah.
That I got to do on these kinds of albums because I had singers who could actually sight read them.
Yeah.
And the thing is that budget was always a big issue. We never had money to do expensive albums. So I only had like 45 minutes a song to record this material. And that's passing the music out for the first time. They're seeing it for the first time. My copyist, I'd been up nights writing it. My copyist was bringing it to the studio while we were recording. And it's such a thrill to spend so many hours on something like that and then hear it come back.
Yeah.
Performed so beautifully by these wonderful singers.
Just,
I mean,
how professional they are, isn't it? It just demonstrates the professionality and the skill.
Oh yeah. I never stopped marveling at the fact that they could sight read this kind of material.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know, it was a treat. I was spoiled. And I know that. And I love that. I
Yes.
liked being spoiled.
You were in the mix, all right. It,
So,
one of the things I had a music shop in the 90s and into the 2000s, just locally here in Cooranbong, just down the road from Avondale College, just a stone's
mhm.
throw from Ellen White's home. She lived here in 1890 to 1899, I think, and literally, 100 meters down the road from me where I'm sitting right now. And I had a
Mm.
music shop in the midst of that, and I was sitting there one day because Adventist people would pass through town all the time and come into my shop. It was like a gathering place, and I remember thinking that um, that Adventists were good at keeping a sense of history alive for their theologians, for their
Mhm.
pastors, for their evangelists, but they
Mhm.
didn't keep anything alive. It's like historically for the musicians and the creatives. And I thought, I
Yeah.
really want to start a magazine back then. And I thought of you, Bob Wolfgram, who's our kind of Australian version of you in some ways. Um, and I thought, because people would come into the shop and I'd say, have you seen this album? Or have you heard of this guy? Or what about this? And the next generation of young Adventists at Avondale were like, no, never heard of it. But you'd say, heard of, you know, George Burnside or some of these evangelists, and they go, "Oh, yeah, yeah, we know all about them." And I just have always felt the church has lacked something by not creating a sense of history with
Mhm.
its creatives. So I attempted, this would have been 1995 maybe or something. I've even somewhere over here, I've got my first magazine that I put out. But it wasn't really until social media came along and I had this
Yeah.
idea that SDAQ&A was going to be about interviewing people like yourself, these kind of conversations. But I got diverted into all the theological stuff, which is fine. But when I chat to you today, I think someone out there, I hope, watches this and is still an Adventist and thinks, you know what? I believe that we should run with creating a sense of history for the creatives in the church because it's such a rich tapestry. It's such a deep, beautiful, immersive realm that is just forgotten by the next generation. And even
And why do you think that is? Why?
because the church doesn't appreciate anything musically that's slightly pushes the boundaries, and creativity is about pushing the boundaries. And
Yeah.
so they resist systematically the creative spirit, and therefore for it to work it has to be supported by the leadership, by the unions, by the conferences, by the churches, by the divisions, by the GC. They need to get behind it. I don't think they ever will, but maybe there's an
Yeah.
independent person that would do something with it because it is incredible. Like I'm just, my memories are just flooding back of these beautiful afternoons of listening to music that you've arranged, or Ralph Carmichael, or Bob Wolfgram, all this incredible time period that it won't be lost, but it's not pulled together. And I just think what a beautiful thing it would be if the
I think
church,
the heritage singers did that.
yeah,
I think they
they've got a sense
create,
of history, yeah, for sure.
yeah. And but they did that on their own. They
Yeah,
didn't do that.
and I'm meaning all the Adventist creatives get to have some kind of a hub like I'll go and buy any guitar player magazine even today, and there'll be a mention of Bob Dylan and Jimi Hendrix. They keep the history alive, and then they talk about the new artists, and then they talk about the up and coming artists that are
That's
just
true.
about to come. And the church has got that in loads and loads with theologians and evangelists and pastors, and the backslapping that they all have with each other. But I just think, wow, imagine have an Adventist magazine that comes out, and there's Paul Johnson mentioned, and there's Bob Wolfgram mentioned, and here's the Heritage Singers mentioned, and what's happening right now, who are the artists now, and what's on the horizon. I had that vision in the early 90s and was not able to really run with it.
Do you think it's because they think of musicians as being performers, and performers are kind of not the same as...
I agree. And the irony is that every pastor, every evangelist
is a performer.
Guaranteed. And you know what? Adventist evangelists are some of the biggest performers. I don't mind, like Billy Graham, there's things you do as an artist and a creative and someone speaking publicly or singing publicly that you incorporate. There's things you have to incorporate that, like a pause or a crescendo, there's things you do, but so I don't mind the scripted part of it. But when it just becomes a template that they just breathe into, I just don't like that. And I just don't think Adventists believe in their artists as a system.
Yeah, I agree.
As a corporation, I just think it's a loss. What a loss! I'm listening to you today and absolutely loving all the topics, the things you're talking about, and I just think, wow, that I just wish there was support in the Adventist Church for its creatives, I guess is all I'm saying. With a sense of history, I mean.
Yeah. For some reason, there has been kind of a spirit of discouragement towards artists, because I think non-musicians think of them as having too big of an ego, perhaps, that they're promoting themselves.
But the irony again, you'll see these evangelists coming to town. We had an evangelist come here to Cooranbong once. His name was Dettamore. I don't know what he's from America, and the big signs were Dettamore is coming, and then massive big signs all around town. Dettamore is coming, and then they'd add something to the sign. Who is Dettamore? And then there'd be a picture of him. And then, all build up to this big revelation seminar and books. And I thought, it's just a rock and roll show, no matter which way you look at it, even if it's a present.
Yeah.
But sadly, the leadership gets behind that kind of self-promotion and ego-driven kind of material, but they're quite down on the musos. Well, Ellen White was pretty down on musos too.
Well, I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Because she said some things that really discourage that sort of thing. And I felt myself rubbing up against that pretty often.
Well, I had one of my questions that which segues nicely into that. Like during your time with Way Out Ministry and your Paul Johnson singers, you were bringing this kind of soft pop and contemporary textures into a denomination that was traditionally very conservative about rhythm and instrumentation. What kind of pushback, this segues into what you just said,
did I get
leadership at the time? And what did you get, and how did you navigate that tension?
Well, the biggest pushback I got was when I was in college, and my junior year in college, I put my first singing group together, and I think we called it Paul Johnson Singers, but I only did one concert, I think. And the only way I got to do it is that it was a project for one of my classes of experimenting in different kinds of evangelistic approaches. So I got to do that once.
Right.
And I got a lot of, it's more than pushback. I got really condemnation. And
Wow. Mm.
and that particular year was really hard for me because as a musician, you've got to have some way to express your soul.
Yeah.
And I just needed to find a piano somewhere to go off by myself so I could play. And it was worship for me, and it was nurturing. And so sometimes I'd go to the music building and find a practice room, and I just sit down and improvise hymns, and I get a knock on the door. You can't play that kind of stuff here. And I get
Mm.
booted out. And it was just hard for me to find a piano to get to, just so
Yeah.
I could worship through playing the piano. I mean, I got to play for song services and things like that, but the music department did not like me.
Yeah.
And they would drag me in, and they had me in tears many times, telling me I was demon possessed and
Yeah.
that this was worldly and all of that. And the end of my junior year in college, I was so stressed out by it that I developed a really bad case of ulcerative colitis.
Wow. Mm.
And my dad, who was a doctor, um, was really worried about me. And the summer between my junior year and senior year, when I came home from college, he said, uh, "You need to, I need to, I need to help you find something that you can do that you just thoroughly enjoy, and you need a summer away from all this stress. What do you want to do?" Well, I had met um, some other Christians at Whitman College, which was another college in the same town as Walla Walla College. And they invited me to a weekend retreat for Campus Crusade for Christ. Do you have that in Australia? Campus Crusade? I don't know. They don't call it that anymore. They call it Cru, CRU. Can't use the word crusade anymore. Um, anyway, I went to this retreat, and I met staff members from Campus Crusade. And we bonded, became good friends, and they wanted me to come to Arrowhead Springs for some of their summer training. Well, Arrowhead Springs, it's like a bike ride away from Loma Linda. It's just on the other side of the basin. Um, so I spent the whole summer uh, at Arrowhead Springs and with some other uh, students from Walla Walla. We got so fired up. We went back to school my senior year, and we had a genuine revival on that campus. I mean, we had hundreds of students really finding a relationship with Christ. They said, "We've never heard this before." We would share what we called the four spiritual laws, is what Campus Crusade used. And it's a very simple little tool of how to invite Christ into your life. And um, that's my senior year. I didn't do any music my senior year. I just put that aside and I concentrated on sharing my faith. And uh, that I was healed. I haven't had colitis since then.
Yeah.
And I've been through some stressful things, but
Yeah.
um, that that experience at Arrowhead Springs between my junior and senior year really changed the trajectory of my life once again, because I ended up going on staff for Campus Crusade after I graduated in theology from Walla Walla. And the, den- the denomination was not happy about that because
Yeah.
there were a number of us that went on staff for Campus Crusade, and they tried to talk us out of that. But as it turned out, that training that I received from that was the very thing that helped me write the way out materials.
Yeah. Wow.
And I don't know
That's a beautiful story, and what a wonderfully insightful thing that your dad did there. And it's that kind of nourishment and nurturing that I wish the Adventist Church offered to its creatives and artists. Like the various Adventist conferences have a role, a person that is hired, their only job is to look out and offer pastoral care to the ministers in that conference. And I remember saying to our conference in the late 90s here in Australia, in New South Wales, North New South Wales, I said, why don't you pay someone and their job is to just look out for the pastoral care of all the creatives, the song leaders, the worship leaders, the writers, the script writers, the artists, and they just couldn't even understand the idea of that. But
that's sad.
yeah, just imagine if they were like your father to you, creating an experience of care that then helped you produce even more beautiful content. I just hope someone's watching today that can, maybe run with that, because I just think it's a tragedy that Adventist artists are just suppressed, marginalized, cancelled, trodden on, no help for mental health issues.
I had to go find it. I had to go find that nourishment.
Yeah.
Both musically and theologically, quite frankly. Well, that experience that I had that summer at Arrowhead Springs was transformative, and it's funny because my dad was thrilled because it had the effect on me that he hoped it would. My mom was a little concerned that I had gotten all this inspiration outside of the denomination.
Yeah.
So she was suspicious of it at first, but here's what's funny, Peter. My whole family went to Arrowhead for a week for the training, and my mom came back on fire like I've never seen her before.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. It was wonderful, actually. So
good.
So after I graduated from Walla Walla in '68, I went on a Holy Land tour with my mom and dad, and I went on a tour that I think Voice of Prophecy put together, because HMS Richards Sr. and Jr. were on that trip. And so I got to know them real well on that trip. And they were interested on what I had learned at Campus Crusade. So when we all got back to the States, they invited me to be on a steering committee they were trying to put together a new youth program and a new Bible study series. So they asked me to be on that committee, and the things that they were suggesting, I finally just said, this really isn't going to turn young people on. You need to talk. First of all, you need to talk their language. This was during the Vietnam War and during the counterculture, and the Jesus movement was just starting in Southern California. And so Campus Crusade was in the middle of all that.
Wow.
So I was making suggestions, and they said, well, could you write something that we could look at and evaluate? And so I did. And it ended up looking like this. I called it the Man from Way Out.
I like it.
And I asked my friend Bob Cording, who did all the artwork for Campus Crusade, to do this.
Oh, wow.
And so every one of these was a Bible study, but it wasn't a pamphlet. It was a poster that kids could put up on their wall.
Mm,
So I did.
that is so
I
good.
wrote about 30 of these.
Wow.
One was they were all different colors, and one well, there was one series that was Bible studies, and there was another series we called Hang-Ups that were about issues that young people dealt with.
So who got behind this and paid for it and distributed it?
Voice of Prophecy.
Wow. So there was a glimmer of hope there where they thought, hang on, we can get behind this.
Well, here's what I was in the back of my mind as I was working on these, was I've got to get, if I can figure out a way to get the gospel into these materials and get it into the system, then I felt like that was my assignment. I took that on as a ministry.
Yeah.
And I got away with it, Peter, I think because I used the language of the street at that time. And it would go out after I'd write each one. It would go out to a reading committee of, I don't know, 30 youth pastors and theologians. I have a hunch that most of them didn't spend much time looking at them because I kept writing these things and I'm thinking, I'm kind of surprised I'm getting away with saying some of these things.
So it's making you think, instead of thinking Adventist leadership is tolerant, you're thinking they're not even reading it.
Well, they weren't catching what I knew I was saying.
Well, the thing is, the late 60s into the 70s was the big Jesus revolution.
Yeah.
Out of California, you're in the heart of it. You're trying to, you're saying there's something really exciting here. I mentioned Bob Wolfgram a few times, Lowell Tarling, Genelevich. They were in Australia, New Zealand, Pacific Islands, musicians, creatives who also caught this wave. And there's a whole bunch of Aussie musicians that were caught up in it as well. And when I've interviewed and chatted with them, they indicate that by 1980 through to 84, Glacier View, the church did start reading this material and content and went, right, you're out of here, and began shutting them down. So tell us a little bit about, did you feel that this movement, this way out stuff, this Jesus revolution that you were involved with and you're trying to infuse and bring energy into Adventism and for the young people, did you feel that eventually it was shut down and you therefore transitioned into your CCM stuff and your secular music stuff? Was there a period you felt you were being shut down?
Well, here's what happened. I was, at the same time as I was writing all of these, I was also writing for the Hollywood Free Paper, which was the official Jesus People or paper that was being handed out on Sunset Boulevard.
That's incredible.
So, but my name isn't on any of this, and I didn't want it to. I didn't want it to be a distraction. So I just concentrated on getting these done. Towards the very end, somebody started to push back. And they started screaming loud about it. So I had to go back to Andrews University and defend all this. That was in
Can you
Yes.
we're not trying to disparage anyone, but I often use names in the show because we're trying to build this tapestry of who the players were. Like you've got Des Ford and Irwin Gain, arch enemies, but quite friendly in social settings. So it's not about criticizing people, but it helps us understand the landscape. People like Ray Cottrell and I'm mentioning Bob Wolfgram, people that were the players in this, not to judge them or accuse them, but just to demonstrate that there's a historical context here.
Well, one of my biggest critics turned out to be Dr. Heppenstall,
Wow, interesting.
which surprised me because we knew each other fairly well, and I didn't think he'd be that hard on me. But
Yeah,
when I had to go back to Andrews and defend what I wrote, I was ready because let me just show you my source material.
this is fascinating. This is
This
going to
is-
segue perfectly into the theological element that I'm like even more perfectly
mean-
than I thought it would.
This is my steps to Christ.
Wow.
Every page is
So you
underlined like this.
You suddenly went from being creative artist to going, I'm also going to get into the documentation of the theology here so I can now engage with you politically.
I did this in high school.
Wow.
I did this. I read all this before
that. So that was the bedrock. Yeah, that was
Yeah,
part
because
of your formative years as well.
my folks did something really, really helpful to me and my sister too. They took us out of church school and put us in high school for our junior and senior years. So suddenly I'm out of the bubble, out of the Adventist bubble, and I'm thrust into a non-Adventist environment. And I had to figure out if I really believed all this or not. And so that was the time that I did all this studying, and I was diligent in reading all of, I mean, all of these books
That's
are
incredible.
all
Tell
underlined.
Tell us a little bit
including-
about your conclusions, and then a little bit about
including this one by
oh
you know who it is, Uriah Smith.
Uriah Smith. Yes. Oh, this is
Even this one's all underlined.
underlined as well. So, okay,
Yeah.
so tell us a little bit about the conclusions you drew as you're on the journey of, do I even believe this stuff? And then bring us back into a little bit more of your return to Andrews and defending your situation with Heppenstall.
Okay, well, my biggest problem with Adventist theology at this chapter in my life is that it was fear-driven and legalistic. And what I experienced in my musical expression of my faith and the various fellowships that I participated in that were non-Adventist. I got involved in Youth for Christ during my high school years. And I remember coming home one day and telling my mom, I said, well, we might have the truth, but these kids know Jesus better than I do. And I want to know him that well too.
Yeah.
So, and I got to hand it to my folks. They were very supportive of me reading outside of the bubble.
Yeah, great.
So during that time, I read a lot of C.S. Lewis. That helped me a lot. Mere Christianity really solidified things for me. So my relationship with Jesus was really intimate and personal. And if somebody criticized it, it's like, well, you don't get to do that. This is my relationship with him. This isn't up for criticism.
Yeah, yeah,
This is too intimate for that. So I wanted to, when I was asked to do these, I I wanted to emphasize the security of the believer because I think that's the biggest thing lacking from Adventist theology is the assurance of
yes,
salvation.
yeah,
So that was a major theme through all of these materials that I wrote. So it was really interesting. When I was finishing up, I was just about done. I only had one or two left to write. Um, the biggest pushback was over the fact that I made God too friendly. It's like
made God
there's
too
not
friendly.
there
Oh,
there's not enough fear in these Bible studies. So and I was using language that wasn't real typical Adventist um, language in terms of being filled with the Spirit and what that meant, walking in the Spirit. And they were afraid that I was going to be pushing some kind of Pentecostal
yeah,
thing,
yeah,
which
yeah,
I wasn't, and I didn't. Um, and so the biggest problem they had with me was that I would say things like, uh, when you receive Christ into your life, your sins are forgiven, past,
yeah,
present, and future.
exactly.
It's not one at a time. When you're in Christ, you're forgiven. And if you screw up or make mistakes, you don't have to do it all over again. You
Yeah,
just come clean about it and continue to walk in the Spirit. So they were uncomfortable with the language that I used, and I knew what their questions were going to be once I got to Andrews. So I had all my books ready. And I had, when I was a teenager, I had read Questions on Doctrine
oh, wow.
and, and all of those books from that period. And I
Yeah,
thought I thought that's what Adventist theology was,
yeah, yeah,
only to find out later that
yeah.
maybe it wasn't.
Exactly. Oh, you've nailed that. I've often said that's ground zero for our current tensions. Yeah,
Yeah,
you can trace back to 1888, 1919, and all sorts of other things, but that was
yeah,
the moment, Questions on Doctrine, they tried to publicly present Adventism as a bit more evangelical and Jesus-focused and Bible-based, and
yeah.
they aren't. I'm reading an article, written by, oh, I've forgotten his first name, Pearson, that was the president in the early
Hmm.
70s and maybe late 60s. And it was written in 1973. And he's talking about literally Jesus hasn't returned because its members of the true church are insubordinate. I don't know if you can think about when you were chatting to Heppenstall or whatever, but it might have been around that time when the very leader of the Adventist church, and in the article, he mentions music. I'm going to read it next week on my Friday show, my Thursday night show. If you tune in, you might enjoy that. But what year can you remember was this kind of chatting with Heppenstall, and you're realizing that, wow, hang on a second, the QOD Adventism that is ushered in Raymond Cottrell and the new views of Brinsmead and Des Ford and this championing of wonderful Jesus revolution in the 60s and 70s, hang on, may not be the reality of Adventism. What year roughly was that?
Well, the question that he asked me when I was back defending what I'd written just blew me away. He said, "Well, when you invite Jesus into your life, where does you say he lives within you in your spirit. Where is that?" He says, "Does Jesus live in your liver or in your spleen or in your..."
Yeah,
And I'm going, "Are you kidding me?" Really? And then I started to realize that there's a layer of presuppositions in Adventist theology that is more like improvement than it is transformation. It's very cerebral, that it's more about the renewing of your mind than it is about a mystical union with Christ at regeneration. So when he asked me that question, I just went, I can't believe he's asking that. But one thing I was equipped with is
So this was,
a
sorry to
book.
interrupt, but this was Heppenstall asking
Yeah,
you that question. Yeah.
yeah.
And what year was that?
It would have been 71 or 2.
Yeah, wow. I thought that's what my prediction was. Yeah. Sorry, carry on.
And so I had all of my quotes ready. And I've often said that Ellen White is like a keyboard. You can play a lot of different tunes on her. So
That is so true.
I had the quotes that I knew I could quote back and say, well, this is what I'm saying, and this is how she said it. But the book that helped me the most was one by Froome called The Coming of the Comforter.
Yeah.
That one was that was my biggest support system.
Well, he was one of the authors of Questions on Doctrine.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he was.
See, and under Figure, the previous president, he was trying to foster a more biblical, Christ-centered Adventism.
Mm-hmm.
Earson comes in, writes that article in 73, right around the time that Adventism is flourishing into this new way of thinking that you were fully on board with and helping to spread. And I wouldn't be surprised if Peterson wrote that article based on some knowledge he had from Heppenstall and your conversation.
I don't know. I have a lot.
So close.
I have a lot of letters from that period. I have a lot of correspondence from that period. That's pretty interesting. But here's how the week ended. It was every day for a whole week. It ended with half the room agreeing with me and half the room not agreeing with me.
So it's not just you and him. It's like you against a panel.
Oh yeah, it was a whole room full of.
Wow.
There must have been 50. There's probably 50 or 60.
Far out.
People in there.
I had a similar thing happen to me in 1981 to 83, maybe 82. So I was literally sitting, defending in a circle of about 50 people. Do you remember any other names?
This was one of those rooms that had tiers in it, all the way around. And then there was a panel table on one end. And there was probably 7 or 8 theologians, heavy duty theologians. I wish somebody had taken notes because it was over 50 years ago, but there were just a couple of things that let me know that this was never going to change.
Yeah.
And I was kind of shocked by it because I was very careful to stay within boundaries that I thought were would be acceptable. I know that the way that I said it was troubling to some people, but on the other hand, half of the room in there said, what Paul's saying is exactly what we teach. That's what we believe. And half didn't.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I ended that week walking away from that experience thinking, this isn't going to change
No.
on the higher level,
Yeah.
and that I had finished my assignment.
Yes.
I agreed to changing some things. There were a few sentences that they just made them see red. And as they're saying this, I'm thinking, there's another way I can say this and still say the same thing.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
Look, I'm going to pivot now into a theological discussion, but it's just interesting that I was truly inspired by people like you, some of the Heritage Singers albums, some of the albums you've just shown before. I mentioned Bob Wolfgram and his album, All My Friends Are Sinners, with Sally Hilder, just incredibly inspired. And so by the time I became of age of being able to, right now it's my turn to start, carrying the baton from these guys and playing music, I find myself in my own little circle and panel speaking against what I'm doing, but it's 1981 or 82. And so 10 years on from your panel, the church had even more cemented its desire not to have people like me and creatives in the church. I wish at that point I had just, stayed an Adventist, but pursued more involvement in other areas. I did. I mean, around 84, I think my band was the support act for Larry Norman over here, and I met Chuck Gerard, and we were his support act, and I met
very good friends of mine.
Oh, really?
But
Well, I met these guys. I played music with them, and so I did expand. But by then, the Adventist machine of suppression was in full swing, and not only was it in full swing, the gospel Adventists that stayed in the church were very good at saying, "Hey, things are changing behind the scenes. Hang in there, hang in there." So I hung in there for like another 30 years. But because of Glacier View, and this is now where I want to head a little bit. Tell us a little bit how aware of you were of Des Ford and Glacier View. He, in many ways, was a bit of an icon to the Jesus Revolution people. They saw what he was saying with assurance and he's righteous by faith and this stuff. They saw that as a beautiful message that they'd not really heard in Adventism before. But here we are at Glacier View, and we have the pre-QOD investigative judgment doctrine and the sanctuary doctrine all trying to be watered down or reworded. And Heppenstall was one of the lecturers that allegedly was really championing a new view of the investigative judgment. And he did a lot to infuse and encourage the Raymond Cottrell and the Des Fords, and he was I think Andrews. So anyway, in Glacier View, he kind of is asked, well, has a moment where he could have defended Des and said, look, I put my energies into, let's keep him here, whatever. But it turns out, by all accounts from the people I've interviewed, and season 2 has 86 interviews about this topic. So I felt like I was front row and center and almost in the back of the room at Glacier View at times. But he, by all accounts, didn't offer the support and almost not threw Des under the bus, but by not saying Des has a point, we're all been questioning the investigative judgment, we all want to revamp it. He didn't.
I know.
And then, as you know about Glacier View, Des essentially was defrocked and soon after lost his credentials. To me, that was this big dark blanket that then descended upon the church, and you were a Fordite or a CB, and you were questioned, and hundreds of pastors lost their jobs, and hundreds of people left the church and were impacted by it. And a line was kind of drawn in the sand so that you come into the 80s and the 90s and beyond, and a lot of the passion, the incredible content that you brought was starting to be watered down. People like yourself, not saying you necessarily, but people that were creative and trying to bring in this new theology were shut down. So I'm interested, because of your interest in theology and doctrine and Adventism, to explore a little bit about what you think of the investigative judgment, because essentially that's the core doctrine that Adventists claim to be their only unique doctrine. Raymond Cottrell, had 36 scholars in the 60s try and confirm its biblical basis on the Bible alone, and they couldn't. So anyway, I've sort of laid a bit of a scene there. But what were your thoughts on the investigative judgment, sanctuary doctrine, Glacier View, Des Ford, as you moved on into the 80s and explored a little bit more of some of your doctrinal thoughts? Because one last quick thing, when I first became aware of your comments and whatnot on some of my groups, SDAQ&A on Facebook and stuff like that, initially I thought, I wonder if that couldn't be the Paul Johnson of the music stuff. This must be a different Paul Johnson, because you were so focused on theological comments and back and forth occasionally, And when the penny dropped, I thought, I've got to get this guy on the show. So that's a little bit of a background there, but share some of your thoughts on the investigative judgment, Glacier View, Des Ford, Heppenstall. Go for it.
Well, I was aware of Des and what he was saying, but I was so far away from the Adventist bubble by then,
Right.
that I remember just thinking, well, thank heavens somebody's finally throwing down the gauntlet.
Great.
But I didn't. I came back from Andrews realizing that if I stayed close to the hierarchy and the denomination, or the Voice of Prophecy, they wanted to hire me full time, and they basically wanted me to be with them full time. And I just knew, and they were wonderful to me. I have no criticisms about them whatsoever. But I knew that if I did that, it would cut me off from doing so many other things that I wanted to do. And I also was personally convinced that what happened to Des would happen to me.
Yeah.
I actually figured that out all the way back at Walla Walla.
Yeah.
My senior year. Because the fact that I graduated in theology and didn't go into the Adventist ministry was very upsetting to a lot of the conference people. And I just knew that this is what God had called me to do. It wasn't a big question mark in my mind. But when I came back from Andrews, I remembered leaving the campus and going, they're never going to change. I will make some of the adjustments that they requested, but once I finish this, I'm done.
Right. Yeah, that's
And like I told you in some of our previous conversations, it didn't feel like I was leaving something. It felt like I was just moving on.
Yeah.
And I had something to move on to. Now, I know a lot of folks that leave Adventism and they're like fish out of water. They don't know what to do, and they don't know where to get nourishment, and they don't know where to go. But I already had a wider fellowship.
Yes.
In my life. And I was always, even when I was in high school, I never liked the feeling that I got from Adventists, like we're better than all the rest of them. We know more than other churches, and they need to succumb to what we believe. it always bothered. It just seemed really narcissistic to me
Yeah.
to say we're the remnant church. We're we're what Revelation talks about at the end of
Yeah.
the book. Um, that never sat right to me with me because it seemed to me that if we actually did have some new revelation or a clearer understanding of something, it should make us humble towards the rest of the church. It should make us, we should be servants to other Christians, not antagonists. And so that never sat right with me. But when I came back from Andrews, I just thought, I'm I'm done.
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
done. And I'm going to concentrate on my music now.
See, what a loss for the Adventist church.
I it never occurred to me to look at it that way. I just thought I've written this. I've said what I know to be true. I know I knew a lot of people were hearing what I was saying, and I just thought I've planted seeds here, and they'll hopefully grow. And I saw that happen quite often, actually. But I just music is my mistress,
Yeah.
you might say. Uh, and it just calls to me, and I was lucky that I was able to express my faith through it.
Mm.
And if I had it to do over, I wouldn't change anything. And I want to make this point too, Peter, is that I have a lot of evangelical friends who struggle over issues that I don't struggle over. For example, Christian nationalism. I mean, growing up Adventist, I have such a clear sense of the separation of church and state that a lot of my friends don't have. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful to for so many things growing up in
Mm.
the family that I did and the
Mm.
church that I did. I don't think I would change any of it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it was all part of God's plan for my life.
Yeah.
I don't have bitter feelings at
No.
all.
No, and you're not a victim. You're in no way coming across like a victim.
No, but there were a lot of hurtful times.
Yeah.
And also when I got back from Andrews, there was one.
Sorry, I should have said victimized. You're not coming across as victimized. In many ways, we've all been a victim to this stuff. But dust yourself off, get up, move on, no regrets. This is part of a bigger plan. And sorry, I stopped your flow there because I want to hear what you're about to say.
Well, there was one Adventist conference member, and I don't even remember his name, but I remember he brought me into his office and he said, "We want you to sign this document that you will never go to Bible studies where people believe in speaking in tongues, or they had all this criteria of who I couldn't fellowship with." And I thought, are you kidding me? And I said to him, I said, I've been taught my whole life that there's going to come a time when my conscience is going to be on trial and I'm going to have to stand for something. And you just did that very thing to me.
Oh, the irony.
Yeah, I just went, I can't believe, I'm shocked. No, I'm not going to sign that.
Yeah.
And why should I? And that sealed it too. It's just like, okay, I'm done. I'm just done. Goodbye. And I didn't really look back. So when the Des Ford thing came along, that was 6 or 7 years later.
Mm.
And I would hear about it and I would just kind of be cheering for him. in my heart,
Mm.
but I didn't know about Glacier View until later. Um, I actually started listening to Dez's YouTube messages maybe about 10 years ago
Mm.
and just enjoyed them so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
And um, I regret that I didn't know him.
Mm. Mm.
I know Jill. Jill and I have a good relationship.
Mm.
Uh, I mean, we're developing a good relationship. I love her.
Yeah, she's
In
awesome.
fact, I told her once, I said, boy, Des sure married the right woman when he married you.
Well, she's done so much to keep to motivate and keep his legacy going. And while
Exactly,
he was
that's what I
alive,
meant.
she was behind the scenes collating
Yeah,
stuff, doing typing, or like, and not just that, theologically infusing ideas that he either agreed with or took on board, and I think gave him, hang on a second, different perspectives. And
yeah, she's bright.
yes, yeah,
She's
yeah.
very bright. I enjoy her immensely. So I wasn't in the stream of things when that was happening, but I was aware of what he was saying. And I remember thinking, finally, because I, of all the doctrines that I stumbled with when I was writing these,
Mm,
is how am I going to write that?
mm.
How am I going to make that work? How am I going to make that investigative judgment be good news?
Yes.
And and
Yes.
so one of the ones I wrote was called "He's on Our Side." That's the one that I addressed that issue. I basically kept it to the text that says we will all um, meet before the judgment seat of Christ, and so there is going to be a judgment, but it's not for the way I understand it, it's not a judgment for salvation. It's the judgment for our rewards. It's a judgment that will render our assignment in the new heavens and the new earth. And um, I don't know how well you know N.T. Wright. Are you acquainted with his
Um,
his
no,
writings?
I don't think so.
He's a wonderful theologian. Um, he has this just incredible um, insight into the fact that what we do in this life, the beauty that we create in this life, and the things we do for the kingdom of God in this life don't disappear. They they translate. They're going to be the building bricks we work with in the life to come. So that the songs that we write now, even if nobody hears them, that's part of our brick and mortar that we're going to be um,
Mm.
working with throughout eternity. And that's been a real encouragement to me because every songwriter, and you'll appreciate this, Peter, there are a lot of things we do that nobody ever hears. And we
Mm.
wish that a lot of ears did hear it because we believe in it so much and it's so personal. And I mean, I've got drawers full of songs that nobody's ever heard, but instead of regretting the fact that they didn't get recorded or they haven't gotten the attention, I just don't think it's wasted. I think, and I've garnered this from N.T. Wright's sermons and some of his books, that what we do in this life is laying up treasure in heaven,
Mm.
and that it's not wasted effort. It's it has eternal value.
Mm. Mm.
So uh, that's taken a lot of pressure off of me
Yes.
in
Yeah.
terms of having to get all this done in one lifetime. I'm running out of years, Peter. um, Luckily, fortunately, my mom made it to 101. So
Wow.
I
That's
got some
incredible. Got some good
there's some
genes.
there's some good DNA in there. Yeah, I'm counting on that.
Yeah, that's good. Just
But
yeah.
as far as the investigative judgment is concerned, it became so clear to me that this is not a biblical doctrine because here's the deal. Every author of the New Testament thought Jesus was coming in their lifetime. Every one of them. Well, that doesn't make room for a doctrine that's going to happen 1800 years later.
Yeah.
Plus, it's just not the whole notion of a probation closing and having to live without a mediator. I mean, I can't find anything in Scripture that you can squeeze that
Yeah.
out of. The whole book of Hebrews is so clear to me that what Jesus did was once and for all. And that mediation doesn't terminate at some point. That's not good news.
When
So
Adventists that watch my program hear me say a similar thing about the IJ, they say, "Well, that's not my Adventism," and I sometimes challenge them and think, "Well, it might not be your Adventism, but it was Ellen White's Adventism, and it
Yeah.
came to her in vision." And she said that what I'm saying and what people like Uriah Smith have said, I confirm, God has confirmed to me in vision that is accurate. And that makes me think, okay, well, it's not your Adventism, but it is kind of the main unique doctrine supported by Ellen White.
It's a pillar.
It's I don't understand how they get around that, where they say that's not my Adventism. I will have a more Bible view, and you can have whatever Adventism you want, but it's not really what the thrust of the church's original and source material message is.
Well, I don't know how you can squeeze that out of the Bible. I can't find it. And like I said, it's not good news. I just know that my sins are forgiven, past, present, and future. I don't live with the consciousness of, oh, gee, what happens if I die and I don't have a sin confessed? I mean, that's a horror. I remember thinking that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that's a horrible thing to have to bear that burden. And it contradicts everything that I see in the New Testament, that the work that he begins in you, he's going to finish. And the whole book of Hebrews, there's no hint in the book of Hebrews that his mediation has a time limit on it. I don't see that.
No.
So that always didn't land inside me as being believable. It's not the Jesus I know. It's not the Jesus I see in Scripture. And I don't see what the value of insisting on that. What's the value of that belief?
Yeah. Well, if you don't insist on it, you're essentially saying Ellen White is a false prophet. So they can't back down. They've backed themselves into a corner. and they need to maintain her authority as the spirit of prophecy, or the whole church collapses.
Yeah, okay, here let's as long as we're going as long as we're gonna wrestle with this. I have a real problem with her being the only one who has a spiritual gift in this denomination. That's not what 1 Corinthians 12 and 14 says. We all have spiritual gifts. And we all exercise them together for the benefit of each other. There isn't one person that has a bigger spiritual gift than everybody else. Or there's not even, I don't see anywhere in the New Testament where one person has the gift of prophecy. And prophecy is more than telling the future. It's speaking the heart of God for edification for the rest of the body. And you might be given a message, but it's supposed to be judged by the rest of the body.
Yeah.
If you have a tongue or an interpretation, it's supposed to be evaluated by the rest of the body. I don't see where one spiritual gift acts like the Pope.
No. And I guess even if the Adventist Church said we've got 100 people that have the spirit of prophecy in many different ways, they still have to stand by the investigative judgment, because they've placed Ellen and her claims that God told her that that was an accurate interpretation, that sanctuary investigative judgment doctrine is true. And so, it's the only relevancy in keeping it going to any person that studies it.
That makes her infallible.
Yeah, exactly. You can't dismiss it or question it, because you then question her connection to God. And as soon as that falls, even if there were a lot of other people with the spirit of prophecy, that key pillar falls, and it's the only unique Adventist doctrine.
But I think that's a false presupposition to think that someone who has genuine inspiration in their life, that everything they think, say, or do is inspired. I don't think so.
But you'd think the one unique doctrine should have a yes or no. Is that just a mistake? Did she just not interpret that correctly? Like it puts, to me anyway, a shadow over, okay, she just made some mistakes, to hang on, this is actually potentially a false prophet. Like, and once you start thinking along those lines, that
it doesn't come from her. It wasn't her insight in the first place. It was Hiram Edson, if I remember.
Hiram Edson and Uriah Smith wrote on it, but her vision is not like everything about her. She was never predictive, but she was confirmative. So she'd have all these ideas come along. So here's this one, they wheel out, she goes into vision, she confirms, yes, this is an accurate portrayal. God told me. When I hear her talk about, women shouldn't ride bikes and all the other stuff that can just be crazy interpretations, even the shut door, I can kind of work out ways around it. But the investigative judgment is the only unique doctrine. To me, so much hangs on her claim that God told her this is true. So therefore, to me, it opens the door to at least pondering, is she a false prophet? Whereas a lot of the Adventist apologists that are more Bible based and gospel focused tend to say, well, she was just flawed, she made mistakes, she wasn't infallible. But I think what's next level to that?
She's a human being like all the rest of us. We have moments of inspiration. I feel at times in my life when I feel
many times
inspiration, but I don't ever feel like it's beyond criticism or beyond evaluation. I want to hear pushback if it's I mean, there's something that's beneficial about that. You grow from that.
Mm.
Um, I there are times when I read some of the things that she wrote, particularly in the testimonies, which I find not that inspiring, where she's really kind of cruel,
Yeah.
and they sound kind of narcissistic to me when she says everything I write is well, she says a lot of different things. There are
Mm.
other places where she says, "Don't listen to me, make the Bible your priority."
I
I
liked what you
mean,
said about you can make her sing any song.
she's
What
a
was it?
keyboard.
Yeah, yeah,
She's a she's a keyboard. You can
yeah,
play a lot of tunes
yeah.
on her.
Because, like you said, she also said what I say. If it's different to the Bible, go against it. My
She said
point though
that.
is that
Yeah.
this one doctrine, all the other stuff, her telling off Jane Andrews almost on his deathbed was disgusting. The way she just ripped into him in
Oh,
a letter,
yeah.
So I can
No.
actually excuse that. I go, there we go. She's a human. She made a mistake. She shouldn't have done that. But I just can't get past this notion of the only unique doctrine she claims. Yes, other people gave it, but she claims God gave that to me. Now you've had inspired moments, but you're not saying God gave me this song for a special reason and this arrangement that you need to listen to it or you will not get to heaven. You're a human that has had incredible amounts of inspiration that we've all benefited from. Thank you. Um, but I'm sure you're flawed like all of us. But
Yes.
she made a claim. She made a claim that God told her this specific doctrine is accurate. I just don't see any room for I can to excuse that. That to me places her potentially in a false prophet category. Otherwise, how can you test a
I
prophet?
don't have to make it either or. It's not
Yeah.
binary
And
for me.
I'm not saying that you have to at all, not at all. I'm just
Well,
saying it opens the door for people to think about that, and it interests me that some people won't even consider that as an
I think it
option.
does her a real disservice
Mm,
to expect that kind of perfection.
right, right.
Uh, you know, I don't wrestle with that.
Mm,
I'm lucky I grew up in a family that asks questions, and that I remember my dad telling me early on. He said, "Don't believe everything you read. Question things." You know, and like I said, I gave her a good hearing.
I- yeah. Can
All
you
my all
can
my
you hear
Ellen
me all
White
right?
books look like this.
Sorry,
So,
can you hear me all right? I just got booted off for a second and I missed what you
oh,
just said.
I can hear you.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, it was only for a couple of seconds. I'm
Can you
back.
hear me now?
Yeah, I just missed that last thing you said.
Maybe it was
It was providential.
maybe it was meant not to be heard.
No, everyone heard you. They just didn't hear me. I dropped out, but you were live still. Yeah, and I'm definitely not pushing back on you or saying that you have to question her and at all. I think people, there's a lot of
For
people
some
who benefited
reason,
from her,
I didn't really struggle with that a whole
Mm,
lot. Um, I took her seriously. I read a lot of her books. Um, and I remember the time that I spent in them. I'm looking for the gospel. I'm trying to find it.
mm.
And I often do, but sometimes I don't. And I don't have a big problem of saying, I don't think so, Ellen.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
to put her on that pedestal is like it's a pope. It's turning her into a pope.
yeah,
She's a paper pope, like Martin Luther said.
yeah. I sometimes
Yeah.
think that she quite enjoyed that and even helped place herself into that kind of position in many ways, that it wasn't just admin, it wasn't just leadership or a wider state. When you read the 1919 minutes to that meeting, there's some definite thoughts from Prescott and A.G. Daniels that she certainly didn't correct any errors that she could have at the time when asked. She just let them continue to be part of the milieu that was almost building a persona.
I wish I had known more about that
Mm,
period, 1919. I didn't hear a whole lot about that.
mm.
Um,
Well, they kept it secret till the late 70s.
yeah.
The material you held up before, that was aimed at the youth, I've got a feeling that that would actually be still very beneficial to young Adventists who leave the church. In something like estimated 60% of young people leave the Adventist church. Is that material available at all still, that all the stuff you
I
wrote
don't
there?
I
Like,
don't think so.
'cause
I was talking to a friend of mine who just retired from working for the conference in Southern California. Um, and I asked, I was trying to figure out who's still alive from the period that I wrote these materials. We couldn't come up with anybody. It's
Oh,
kind of
that's
scary.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking, like, I'm actually trying to compile on behalf of the progressive gospel Adventists, what I feel, having this is like interview number 586. I feel like I've had my finger on the pulse. I interview all kinds of Adventists. I give
Oh
my
yeah.
opinion, I push back and whatever. But I'm trying to compile several resources that I think would benefit the gospel Adventists, those who see Ellen in perspective, and I often hold up my Reclaiming the Prophet book. I won't do it today, but um, so what I'm saying is that one of the resources, and I've brought this up a few times, is this book by Rain de Bruinsma, Towards an Authentic Adventist Theology. I'm going to do a whole show on 4 or 5 resources that I think gospel Adventists, if you want to create something and get behind it, this would be good for you. So there's that book. There's this one, which Julian has put together, and you can get it on Amazon. It's Des Ford. It's basically a transcript of the October 27, 1979 Spectrum meeting that kind of went from 50 people to 300 people, had to move to the big venue at 1,000 people. There's this series of magazines, Verdict, that Bob
Hmm.
Greenspan put out.
I used to
And
get that.
yes, and it's fantastic. And so I'm trying
Yeah.
to just, my little contribution to help the progressive gospel Adventists. I'm putting together this little show and portfolio of resources. Where I'm getting to is it'd be great to provide your content that you did in all those flyers for young people. Is there any way I can get a hold of that I can share on this show that's coming up soon? For
Maybe.
people? Yeah, if you can, let me
I'll
know, and I'll compile it,
I will.
and I'll add it as a resource.
The only problem is that I wrote this in lingo that's kind of
Exactly.
dated.
Yeah, yeah. I'm pretty sure that's fine. Like, the reality is the gospel Adventist movement, progressive Adventists, grew out of the post-QOD era in the 60s and 70s. So the
Yeah.
resources come from that era. So if you're going to bundle it together as a resource package, you have to take that into context. And I think people will be totally fine with that.
I appreciate that because I know that what we experienced on campus at Walla Walla was a genuine move of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
we just, in fact, my sidekick, his name's Paul Jensen. We're we're like Paul and Silas, except
Paul
we
Johnson and
we
Paul
have the
Jensen.
same name.
I love it.
But we did a seminar a couple years ago for it was at Walla Walla. It was what do you call it? When people from different graduation classes come back and meet.
Like a reunion.
Reunion. And the topic was, did that move of the Holy Spirit in 1968, 67, 68, did it last? Did the fruit from that that year, that revival, did it last? And it was wonderful to hear all these people stand up and say, that's when I first understood the gospel.
Yeah.
And it's as precious to me today as it was then.
Yes.
I mean, that just thrilled me to hear that.
And here's what I'm trying to do, even though I cajole the progressives and the gospels Adventists all the time, is I'm trying to not let that special thing die out within Adventism, so that the people like yourself, Des Ford, Ray Cottrell, Robert Wolfgram, that what you guys set into motion that so inspired me, and still influences the church, even though they're not even totally sure of it because they've tried to chop it out. It's still there, but in a more of a cultural Adventist kind of format. I would just love to see a thread of history continued on so that people can access the content, and when we all die off and our generation is retired or left this mortal coil, the young kids that not just in Adventism, but can see this special thing that happened, from 67 to in many ways 97. There was a good bunch of years there where it really shone brightly, and young people today, right through secular, Christian, Adventist, it's just such a special thing that I think is kind of could potentially be lost unless there's a bit of an organized effort to keep it going.
I don't think the Holy Spirit will let that happen.
Yeah,
I think,
yeah.
like,
And I don't think anyone has to approach it with any sense of urgency or foreboding or I think it will happen. It'll just keep going. Like you'll even, like, I cannot wait to this afternoon. I'm dropping my girls off to musical theatre, and I'm going, while they rehearse, I've got several hours. I'll be sitting in the car outside the theatre, and while they're rehearsing, I'm going to be going through all these albums. One of the things I love about what you've done musically is, in fact, maybe you even were responsible for it. The Hollywood strings sound, the beautiful harmonies associated with the violins and the cellos and the string arrangements, the choral arrangements. When I listen to your music, that sound transports me, just the sound of it. So that's like what you're saying, the Holy Spirit. We don't need to, as long as that music's out there, like what you did for your friend before he died, to let him know that his sound is out there. It's going to keep alive and well. It's going to continue. So,
I was just so fortunate to be inspired by someone as brilliant, by my standards anyway, as Ralph Carmichael. He was he was just a genius, and I don't put myself in the same category with him, but I did carry on his tradition. And the music outlives us.
Yes.
Yeah. It and that's that'll keep me going till I'll keep putting it out there.
Yeah.
As long as I have breath, I'll keep
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
it.
I remember
But
when sorry, keep going.
I just think, Peter, that the gospel is going to keep knocking on the Adventist door,
Mm, mm, mm.
because I can see it, at least from 1888. I can see it happening over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I, I feel so awful that what Des Ford went through. I just
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's just so, what a tragedy that
Yeah, what
was
a tragedy, yeah.
to
But like
have
you
that.
say, that light shines through, and he's gonna keep on shining for many, many decades to come, and so is your
Jill
music. So
Jill will make sure of that.
oh, yeah, yeah, she's a legend. Like, she's put together that book I mentioned earlier. She's got this other great one that came out recently called Bye Bye and Here's Why, and it documents, Monica Vallis, who in the 30s was pushing gospel stuff, and forgotten. No one remembers. So she's keeping a lot of things alive. I'm writing a book at the moment. I'm very excited about it. I Initially it was going to be like gospel Adventists, your Trojan horses, your honey trappers, you just tricked us and false hope and shut us down. And but as I researched and wrote, it, almost as Ellen White does, I have all these ideas, I put them into my 586 interviews, and I say to Chat GPT, go and collate all my ideas on gospel and progressive and honey trap and Trojan horse and all of that stuff, and work with me in compiling a book. So Chat GPT is my Marion Davis and Fanny Bolton. So I admittedly, here's just my ideas. And
I just
Chat
don't.
GPT is extracting my ideas. But what's happened, just to finish this little thread, is as I've been writing it, the tone has totally shifted in my angst towards what I thought were the false hope gospel people, and is leaning to, like, let me just view this as a bit of a civil war between the pre-QOD and the post-QOT theologians and ideas and theology. But I can't believe how softened I've become in just the last 2-3 weeks from wanting this book to be a real, hone in on you guys for offering me false hope, to being quite a beautiful look at just this broad history from 1888 to now, to reclaiming the prophet. And it
You
kind
know
of
what gives me
plays
hope?
nicely into what you're saying.
Here's what gives me hope. The gospel is in all the hymns we sang from in the Adventist hymnal. Those hymns,
Yeah.
the gospel's in there. The Fanny Crosby hymns, all of those wonderful songs we grew up with. I don't know if they still sing them, but they're in the hymnal.
Yeah.
I was able to find the gospel within the culture that I grew up in. And I think that will continue to happen. But I do think the biggest issue that related to Ellen White is the whole issue of spiritual gifts. Church needs to go back to 1 Corinthians 12 and 14 and revisit what spiritual gifts are all about. Because I never heard growing up, maybe you did, but I never heard growing up that we all have spiritual gifts.
No.
I was never encouraged to try to
No.
decipher what my spiritual gifts were, which are different than talents. Music's a talent, but discernment and teaching and evangelism, we were never taught to understand what our spiritual gifts were. I figured them out, but I didn't get any help from the church.
Yeah.
figuring that out.
Yeah.
And I just think it's real clear in the scripture that we are to evaluate whether spiritual gifts, we're to test the spirits. It says that.
Mm.
We're
Mm.
supposed to test them.
Yeah.
And she's not exempt from that. From
No,
that.
well, that's why I'm saying, I don't mind testing if she's a false prophet or not as well. If you're going to test, test. What you said earlier, and we'll wrap it up soon. I want to bring some comments in from the viewers, but you said earlier that you realized after that meeting you had your own little mini glacier view in the early 70s with Heppenstall and the panel, that you walked away from that and realized the church was never going to change. Does
Yeah.
that make you hesitant to recommend people join Adventism, even though you found your way in it, you found your way beyond it, you found your way to reconcile Ellen White and the whole theology? You still find beautiful aspects in there, but is it a movement because of this kind of never going to change structure? Is it something that you would recommend people to join? You're not saying flee from, but would you encourage people to join it?
I think it depends on the local church itself. I think there are some churches where I would encourage people to go there. And there are some that I would encourage to flee.
Yeah.
But I don't have a one size fits all response to that. There's some wonderful minds in
Oh, yeah.
the Adventist community and some wonderful theologians. Here's another thing, Peter. I haven't run into a denomination anywhere that is 100% right about anything. I mean, every denomination has things to offer to the body of Christ and some which are questionable. But I have yet to find a church where everything's perfect. It doesn't exist.
No.
In this life. But what's more important is finding community where your walk with God is nourished. And that might just be in a home church. I mean, that's how it started out. That's really what I kind of segue into after I was done writing these and went through the experience at Andrews. I had a home church in my home for quite a few years.
Wow.
And a lot of the musicians that I hired and worked with became Christians during that period. So I was real clear on what my calling was. And right now, my calling is to talk to you.
Yes. It's funny, like when I was talking about how I wanted to create this magazine that kept the history of music alive. When I was looking at it in the early 90s, I wish I'd had this conversation then, because it was exactly the kind of conversation I wanted to have, what we're having today. And maybe back then when I was an Adventist and had passion and a lot more youth behind me, as in my own youth, being a lot younger. What's that, 30, 40 years ago now? Hard to believe. 30 years ago. I wonder if that would have changed my trajectory. In the end, I had to leave because I knew it wouldn't change, but I also felt that it was less benign than other religions. A lot of religions nothing's perfect, like you say, but I found Adventism has a special calling to kind of bring about a lot of mental health issues for people But that's a whole other topic. But where I'm going with that is I just have really valued our conversation today. I really thank you so much for
I
coming.
loved it.
So good.
I've been looking forard to this for a
We've kind
long
of
time.
touched on it's going to happen one day for a while now, and
Yeah.
here it is. I'd love to get you back. Maybe as you find maybe some of that resource material, we could do a program where we just talk about, hey, here's some stuff that young people could benefit from. And maybe when a lot of
I
the
would
music
love
is on Spotify, we can even share that a bit more too. So just to
I'm-
close today, if you've got another 5 minutes, I'll just bring up some comments. And thank you everybody for watching today too. My guest has been Paul Johnson. Really enjoyed our chat. But Malcolm Clark, he's a very talented musician. He goes, great Scott, Paul Johnson himself. This is a while back in our interview, by the way.
Wow, he knows about Barbara Morton.
Yes,
That's
how in the world did you
amazing.
get him on? Paul, I've loved your arrangements since I first heard your album with Barbara Morton back in 1970.
That's so nice.
Now
How lovely. Thank you.
he's connected to Roy Gain. Is it, Malcolm, are you still watching? Is it your sister that married Roy? I think so. And he also added a little bit later, your music is still my go-to. Incredible albums. Talk to me about the Time of My Life album. Wow, almost disco. Always gets me pumped up.
That's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you share us a quick second of what was it like to work with Whitney Houston, Donna Summer, and Al?
Well, I kind of fell into that. I never expected to end up being music director for award shows, but it gave me the opportunity. Every show that we did, there were sometimes as many as 20 artists on shows like that. Many times I got to arrange for them. So one of my favorites was Andy Williams. Whitney was just a thrill. I did the orchestration for The Greatest Love of All.
Yeah.
She didn't have an orchestration.
Amazing. What a song. What an arrangement.
I was amazed that she didn't have an orchestration for it. She traveled with her band, and her music director, Ricky Minor, asked me to do the orchestration, and I was so honored to be trusted with that. And I have that on video. I did something that I didn't get caught doing, but I'm so glad I did. I hid someone in the back of the orchestra with a video camera.
Good.
And I would have been in so much trouble if I had gotten caught. But
you wanted to document such an amazing moment.
I have found enough video to edit down quite a few events like that. And so I try to get one up on my Facebook page every month.
Oh, good.
So far, I've done one with Bill Medley from the Righteous Brothers, who did The Time of My Life. Donna, I'm working. I did Send in the Clowns for Donna.
Wow.
And it was never recorded, so I have the only video of that, of rehearsal and show, both.
Wow.
And for Whitney, I have both the rehearsal and the show. And she was so wonderful. Oh my goodness. It was before she married Bobby Brown. It was an earlier chapter of her life. But she was so gracious. And she came in, you wouldn't have recognized her. She came in looking like the maid. It might have been her camouflage. I don't know. But I was surprised she let me take a picture with her looking like that. So I have that picture, but I also have one of her looking fabulous that night for the show. And that was the last show I did. It was a tribute to Michael Jackson. And That's a whole nother
Yeah. Did
rabbit trail.
I'd heard that you had worked with Michael Jackson or
Yeah,
something.
well, I did that tribute. It was a tribute to him. This was in 1990.
Did you meet him?
Oh yeah,
Yeah. That's what
I did a whole project at his house. He let me use his studio.
My daughter is going to go crazy. Ruby, you should give her a quick shout out to the camera. She's a huge fan of Michael Jackson, and when I told her I was chatting to you today and that you'd worked with him, she was like, "Wow."
He was so thrilled with the show that night. He said you can use this was not at Neverland Ranch. It was this house he grew up in Encino. They had a studio in the garage. He said, "You're welcome to use the studio from midnight to 6 in the morning. It's yours,
Wow.
free."
Wow.
And I did a whole musical project there, a stage musical. And so, yeah, I have a lot of really fond memories of Michael.
Yeah. We're
And
definitely going to have to get you back on and talk more about these memories. They're joyful, and they show you've weaved your life through even, some interesting, harder times, but all the way through, I just sense there's this joy coming out. We'll
they were joyful, and
Yeah.
they're even more joyful to me now as I go back and relive them, because
Yeah.
when I was in the moment, there was so much tension and pressure,
Yeah,
and
of course.
they're almost more fun for me now. I mean, I had fun doing them, of course, but
Yeah. But I know what you mean though. The
yeah.
pressure. Yeah. A couple of quick more. Say Hey has been writing a lot in the comments and talking about different artists, and he talks about Phil Keaggy as a loud guitarist. He had to put earplugs in, but lots of good memories, simpler times, and many Jesus People rockers.
I have lunch with him once a month.
Yeah, Phil Keaggy. No way. Oh my
There's
goodness.
a group of guys I meet with once a month, and Phil's part of that. Yeah, he's a great guy and a great guitarist.
Yeah, great guitar.
Incredible.
Yes, yeah. Malcolm Clark, who's a beautiful keyboard player, by the way. I met him when I was in Riverside in California. I went to the former Adventist fellowship a couple of years ago, and he played some stuff with me, and I just loved his playing. He said a few of us at Walla Walla were fans of your music. We'd sit down at the piano and try and reproduce it. Peter, please let Paul, and I'd like to get in touch with him, so maybe I can pass on your email.
Yeah, you can connect us later.
And Paul, did you direct That the World May Know?
Yes, I did.
Singers did at the Fred Bock Memorial. Breathtaking.
Yeah, I have a video of that. That's one of my favorite videos that I still have. Yeah.
Vega writes the question you asked before: how am I going to make the IJ good news? You can't.
I tried.
Yeah, you tried.
It doesn't sing.
It doesn't sing. It's the one. Look, there's so many comments. You might like to go through them later. We will leave it there. Paul Johnson, I've really enjoyed our chat today, and I look forward to keeping in touch. And who knows? Maybe someone will run with the idea of this, keeping creatives and Adventist musicians and people that are involved in that realm, keeping that history alive.
Great idea, Peter. That's a great idea.
To happen.
Well, it was an honor for me to be a part of your cavalcade of interesting people.
Interview number 586. Incredible.
Oh my goodness.
That's just in the last
That's great.
6 years. So,
Wow.
incredible. Yeah. Until
You've
next,
got a great
yeah.
you've got a great ministry and a great platform, and I applaud
Well, I
what
really
what you're
appreciate
doing.
hearing you say that, and maybe some good can come of it, even though a lot of people see a lot of controversial stuff and people keep telling me off all the time. But I also feel like there's a community growing, and some good can come out of it, I think. See how we go.
Already has.
Maybe.
I watch you often when I go to bed at night. I don't always make it all the way through.
Yeah.
You put me to sleep
I
quite a
help
few
people
times,
go to sleep.
but not because you're boring.
I've recorded a sleep album of my gentle music. I'll send you a copy of it. It's on Spotify.
Okay.
Well, until we meet again, Paul, thank you again. And thank you, everyone.
Okay,
For
Peter.
watching. We'll be back
It
tomorrow.
was my pleasure. Bye,
See you
everybody.
soon.
Okay, buddy.